Hi, everybody. Welcome into this week's edition of Midwest Racing Central. Today, I'm Pete Pistone. Hard to believe we're halfway through the season, the middle of July, and let's bring our good friend and contributor here at Midwest Racing Central, Kevin Ramsell, in to kind of give us a big picture view of what he's seen so far and what lies ahead. Kev, how are you?
I'm doing good, and especially after what I went through a couple weeks ago, pretty much back on the men and trying to act like I'm a normal person again. So, but I'm uh, normal will probably be a stretch, but yeah, we'll be pretty close. So,
Well, I'm glad to hear your health is better. Again, I appreciate what you do here for our website and contributing things. Again, my parents used to tell me this when I was little. Time's going to go fast the older you get. I can't believe we're in the
yeah,
middle of July.
yeah,
Let's just start there. Like, sort of big picture, Kev. What have you seen so far around the Midwest in terms of racing since we kicked things off kind of in early April?
yeah. Because we started off in early April, we had a lot of questions coming in about the Midwest tour, and Marty reached out to me actually about after the second Midwest tour race and says, yeah, we're gonna need some help. So I gladly came back in to help out with what I can with the Midwest tour, and I've seen pretty much stable car counts with those. I think back in our younger days ourselves, we were lucky to see 40, 50 cars show up for an event. And I think if we see anywhere between 20 to 30 cars show up for an event, I think that we should be happy with that. I mean, if Formula One can run an event with 22 cars, short tracks can easily do that too. And the thing is that we're seeing good quality cars too. We're not seeing this a field of two or three drivers show up in a bunch of part-timers kind of thing, or if you want to call them, field fillers type of field. We're getting events up there to where there's half the field or almost three-quarters of the field. Someone in that field could win the race.
We brought the Midwest tour. Let's start with that. And I know we got a race this weekend at Madison, which we'll get to on Friday night.
Yeah.
But I know there was a race that was supposed to be up at Elko Speedway that is not happening. Can you kind of separate fact from fiction on why that race isn't happening, Kevin?
Yeah, it's a simple business thing where communication is key. And if there's not communication between the two parties and contracts are not signed, you really can't go forward with an event. And that's pretty much what I've been told is the situation was there, is that there was, then neither sides were really getting back and forth to each other. The Midwest Tour would reach out to Elko, and Elko would not get back to them, and so they pretty much came in like an impasse to where we kind of felt we had to go out from that way. And then the Hawkeye Downs race, the reason that was canceled is because it was too close to the Slinger Nationals, and a lot of the drivers who wanted to compete in that were showing interest in Slinger Nationals, and they thought the events were way too close to each other for them to take a risk of driving down the Iowa and coming back with it. So, and I think probably some of the economy probably had something to do with those long distance events, because when you look at the mainstay of the Midwest Tour drivers, they're mostly Wisconsin or Central Wisconsin based. So those have been the two longest trips of the year for that. So I understand where business comes in before pleasure on those things. And yeah, fans are upset, and they hate to see the word canceled, and they hate to see the fact that their favorite drivers aren't coming up there, or super late models aren't coming up to a track that normally doesn't race super late models. Unfortunately, that's the way how the business runs these days.
All right. So those unfortunate events are for that reason. But let's concentrate on what we've had on the Midwest tour so far. We've had some good events. We've had some interesting events. What have you
Yeah.
made of the tour so far going into Madison on Friday night, Kev?
It's been enjoyable so far. I mean, you got if we'll be looking at here, we got a points leader who hasn't won a race yet, in Casey Johnson, going for his fifth title, the Ty Majeski. I gotta be careful I say Ty, and then we got the Austin Nason coming back and winning the Joe Shear Classic. Paulie Schaefer winning at Jefferson, and the excitement he had coming out of the car, and then follow that up the following week by winning up at a Live for Five race up at the Dells. And then Dalton Zier dominating up in Norway, which was to be expected with that. So it's a very unique thing that we have going on so far this year with the Midwest Tour, and I think everybody's excited to get back on Friday night for the Howie Ledo race, and then the upcoming Gandrew 250, which is a crown jewel event this year as well, too, up at Wisconsin International Raceway on that famous first Tuesday in August.
Yeah, Tuesday, August 4th, that is coming up. So you mentioned Casey Johnson, fresh off a Slinger Nationals victory a couple of
Yeah,
weeks ago. So I went up there on Monday. I watched the whole qualifying thing, the bracket thing that they had for the super
yeah,
late models. I got to tell you, Kev, I thought that was pretty cool. What do you think about that format that Travis Dassow and that team had up there?
yeah. I was watching that too, and I thought, okay, this is interesting. I think this is it's almost kind of like when you watch some of like the velodrome cycling events at the Olympics, where they got the time trials, where they pit the two bikers, where one starts on one half of the lap, the other one starts, and you got that time event. I enjoyed it. I think it was a very unique thing, and you gotta be good at a certain time. You gotta be good on all the times and stuff. And you're taking some risks. Like Ty Majeski, he went out there and said, "I'm just put one lap down and see where it goes." And you got guys out there doing 3 or 4 laps trying to get their best lap going with it. I thought it was very unique how it was done, and that the format was not to set up the lineup for the race, but how we're going to qualify. And we all know that sometimes the qualifying order at certain events, depending on what time of day it is, it's more important to go early or go late in those things. So I think that had a nice factor into it as well. So I really enjoyed it. Plus, an extra $5,000 being put up for it as well too was a cool deal as well. So I hope it's something that stays and they do it again next year and that becomes their unique tradition. I think that because they invented it, they should keep it and no one else should steal it.
I agree with you. I liked it a lot. And then I guess we got to the main event on Tuesday that, as you mentioned, Casey
Yeah.
Johnson won. Wasn't easy. Got a lot of craziness at the end with Ty Majeski and Carson Brown and Andrew Morrissey. What'd you make of the way that race ended with Casey Johnson finally getting a Slinger Nationals win?
Well, I think I got home from work and there was like 10 laps to go and Casey Johnson was running six. I'm
Yeah.
like, okay. Ty's leading. The next thing you know, Ty gets bumped by Gabe Summers, and Gabe Summers pushes him out of the way and takes over the lead. And next thing you know, to come off a turn four, and Ty's spinning and brings out a caution. Okay, let's put Morrissey and Carson Brown on the front row. And you see those two bouncing each other back and forth on the backstretch, and they go off and they go out. They get the green flag off to turn one, and Brown basically pancakes Morrissey into the wall going into one. I'm like, oh boy. And then Morrissey tried to retaliate. And the next, lo and behold, Casey Johnson is on the outside and you got Carson Brown with some damage. And that outside is going to roll on a restart at Slinger. And Casey Johnson, you didn't have to leave many laps to earn the big paycheck, but it's a big feather in his cap for the career that he's having. He's won. I think this is probably one in like Wisconsin. It's probably one of the more bigger events he has not won until this time.
Yeah, that was a big win for him. I know he's very emotional there in victory lane. All right, so let's just take that and then fast forward and go back to what we're going to talk about here at Madison. Casey Johnson in the race. He's won that race before. What do you make about the entry list that we've got for Madison on Friday night and how that might play itself up there at MIS?
I think it's going to be a very competitive race on Friday night. And I think, and I'm not saying this in a negative way, but it's just the honest truth. With Ty Majeski doing the truck race at IRP, that's going to prevent him from coming up there. So
Yep.
people are going to be coming in with more of a gusto of like, hey, I got a legitimate chance to win this race because everybody's going to think that from a fans and some other drivers' perspectives, Ty would show up and is going to dominate this race and take away another checker flag. This race could be wide open, but it could also be another Casey Johnson dominate win. Austin Nason, who won the Joe Shear Classic, could be a factor. Luke Fenhouse looked real strong at the Joe Shear Classic until he fell out after this round, after like 100 laps or so after halfway mark at the Joe Shear Classic. This is going to be your classic Friday night special 100 lap event, the traditional thing that you and I saw growing up at Madison, where once in a while they'll throw out like either a 50 lap feature or back in the days when Wayne Erickson ran Madison, he would have the Mellow Yellow 100 on a Friday night and bring out some of the big guys for a 100 lap Friday night. And that's what this track's going to feel like. And with the Midwest Truck Series there, I think fans are going to see a really, really cool show on Friday night. And it wouldn't surprise me if we have a surprise winner or if we have your Casey Johnson, Austin Nasons, or Luke Fenhouse in victory lane.
And the Midwest Truck Series will be there as well. They're going to have a healthy entry list for Friday night, so that should be good. For our listeners who may not know who Harry Ledar was, tell us a little bit about him and what he means to the sport.
Howie
Howie,
Leto was yeah, Howie.
Howie,
It's okay. Howie was a well-known crew chief and mostly in ASA racing back in the
yeah,
days. He's more well-known for being a crew chief for Jimmy Johnson back in when Jimmy Johnson ran the number 44 Pennzoil car in ASA competition. But he also fostered a lot of other drivers like Steve Holshausen, man, the Steve Carlson when Steve Carlson ran ASA, and then later on in life helped Kelly Byers win the ASA Late Model Series title. And Travis Dassow also winning the title as well too. And then his last driver was Blake Brown, the grandson of Terry Cunis, who owned Madison. Mentored him until he passed away from cancer in 2010. But he was like if you're familiar with short track crew chiefs these days, he was like what the Bond Sus is today in short track racing for a crew chief. How he was that guy. How he was the one who was able to adapt with the changes, know what the car needed, could communicate well with the driver, could educate the driver well on what they need to tell him and things like that. And he was probably one of the most successful crew chiefs that will go down in history without going up to the higher ranks of the sport.
all right, so that's coming up on Friday night at Madison International Speedway. I want to ask you about some of the other things we've seen so far in the first half of the year. When you came with us at the beginning of the year, we talked about some of the weekly shows and what we're seeing there. You mentioned the Dells. We had Jerry Albee with us here on the podcast. He kind of told us what he's doing up there. Jefferson Speedway had a really good show, I think, this past weekend, Kevin. A
Yep.
lot of cars that showed up there. Kind of what's the sense that you're getting from some of the weekly shows we're seeing there? Wisconsin International Raceway, their Thursday night show, that seems to be pretty healthy as well.
I think the key word is stability. They're very stable with what they're getting per week, and they're getting quality shows every week. And I think that the crowds are really starting to recognize it. I don't know if you saw the video from last Thursday's race up at WIR, but man, that Canadian fire smoke that
Yeah.
really put I mean, the place looked like it was covered under fog the whole time, and it's amazing that they were able to get that show in without health violations or anything like that. But it's good that they were still able to get in. I'm seeing a very stable car. You're not seeing anything where you're not really reading anything online saying the car count's really down this year or there's influx of cars or anything like that. I think people pretty much have made their beds and they're lying in it right now. So they're happy where they're at right now with it. And like with the Midwest Tour, we got last time I saw was 22 cars entered. That's going to be for Friday night, and I think the Leto that's going to be the 250 could probably see around 25 to 30 cars for that, and that's going to be a very solid field for that race for Tuesday night. I asked Greg McCarnes if there's going to be any NASCAR drivers coming up to that race, and he says stay tuned
Hmm.
with that. So there is he's working on some things for that, but overall it's pretty stable throughout the state. I was up at La Crosse last month, and they had a solid field of late models up there for their weekly show, and you got people up there like Jacob Gady and Skylar Holzhaus and putting on shows for the fans, and they've had a different variety of winners up there this year too. And that's the other thing I'm seeing is you're not seeing the same winners every week either.
Yeah. So you mentioned NASCAR drivers. I'm curious about that. I mean, the guy right now is Carson Hocevar. We all know about that, right? He went to Slinger. He went to Berlin. Maybe he's going to go to Kaukauna, as you mentioned, with Greg's crew there on August 4th. Does that still resonate with race fans here in the Midwest when a NASCAR driver shows up in your mind, Kevin?
I think it depends who the NASCAR driver is. On the Wednesday night they had the Harvicks at Owasso Speedway over in Michigan, and that drew a pretty good crowd. And they had like a dinner with the Harvicks the night before, which at least they think they charged like $200, and they had a very good turnout for that. With the Harvicks and such, I think it all comes down to it is with what Carson Hocevar is doing on the Cup side right now, winning races, the way how he's being projected out as far as his driver mannerisms and things like that. I think he is becoming more of an attraction when he shows up at a short track. And I think people want that kind of he's almost like taking the place of Kyle Busch. You know how Kyle Busch would come to the short track because of if you want to call it controversy or of such that he does on the cup level or the top three level. You know how Kyle would always people are like, oh, Kyle Busch is gonna come here. Let's see what kind of crap he's gonna pull here and things like that. I
Yeah.
think people are starting to get that kind of wavelength with Carson Hocevar as well too. Carson's a great kid. I mean, he's very easy to talk to, always approachable, always fun to work with, and I actually have no problem with him. And it's just kind of funny seeing when you sit there and watch and you see some of the things happening and you're like, yeah, he's got a little Kyle Busch in him, you know, and I don't mean that as a disrespect to Kyle Busch. Kyle Busch is a successful racer, and once Carson got his first win, you can see he's been pretty talented ever since
Well, what's
with that.
interesting to your point, because I've talked to Carson about this, I talked to him at Slinger actually. He doesn't like to just show up. He wants to be competitive, right? He wants to, like you
Yes,
said, when Kyle Busch would come with that 51 super late model, you knew he
it
was
wasn't
going
a
to part of
show.
the mix, right? It was a show. Carson Hocevar is the same way. He doesn't just want to show up and sign autographs. He wants to be in the mix to possibly win the race. I think that sets him apart. I agree with you.
Yeah, I agree with you wholeheartedly too. Yeah, there's some we've had some experiences in the past with drivers who just show up and run
Yeah.
15 laps and pull off the track saying, "Oh, there's something wrong with the motor," and they're looking at going, "This motor's intact." Yeah, there's something wrong with it. I don't know what it is. You know, I won't say who did that, but that was way back in the early '80s. So, but but that's the thing is that when these cup drivers come in, this new generation of cup drivers come into a short track, they know they're there to help put on a show, but at the same time, they're racers. They take a look at Kyle Larson and everybody who goes and runs the Christopher Bell and those guys when they go and run the Chili Nationals. They're not just there for an appearance. They got a reason to be there, and they're starting. They got those reasons too. Now when they go to the short tracks, is that they're coming in there and they like we better show that we're really good at this, so that we don't get this back up on the cup level saying, why are you up there when you can't do anything at Kakana or you can't do anything at Madison? You can do it. A few years ago, William Byron showed up with a at Madison before for the Howie Leto race and drove a Chris Wimmer car. He went out and he set fast time. Okay, that's legit. And then you're on a flight that night heading to Daytona to run the Coke Zero 400 the next day. But he just didn't show up to drive around and such. He came up there with the intent of trying to work on that car and get things done.
Before you go, so we mentioned some of the races that are coming up on the Midwest Tour side. What else here in the second half of July, August, September, and heck, we're going to get into the fall specials here before too long. What else is on your radar, Kevin?
We got the for Labor Day weekend the Jim Sauter Classic at Dallas Raceway Park, which has become a real fun event. Great crowds turn out over Labor Day weekend on the Labor Day Saturday night. And then of course Dells will host the National Short Track Championships, a thing that you and I are very well known, very well aware of. That was at Rockford. And Grundy's got the Bettenhausen Classic, which is going to be an ASA Midwest Tour race this year. With it, and I think that's going to be interesting to see how that goes with it. And then, of course, the 4 days, October 8th, 9th, 10th, and 11th, Oktoberfest up in La Crosse, Wisconsin, and hopefully we'll have 80-degree weather like we've had there last year. It was fun to
Yeah,
rock on Oktoberfest with shorts on instead of a hoodie.
I couldn't believe it when I saw those pictures. Like, wait a minute, this can't be La Crosse, Wisconsin, but it was. Uh, all right. Well,
You
again, we
got we got to
appreciate.
get you up. We got to get you up to fest.
I got to get up there. I will have to see what my schedule looks like at the end of the year. I've never been, so been to La Crosse before, but never been to Fest. So hopefully, I may be able to work it out this
The,
year.
the reason why you should come to fest this year,
Yeah.
Mark Martin's going to be there all 4 days,
Yes. Mark
and
Martin,
with his
he might be here on this podcast before we get there too. So we're working on that.
that'd
That'd
be
be great.
awesome. That'd
That'd
be
be
awesome.
terrific. Got a lot of Midwest racing experience with Mark. I appreciate you taking time. Appreciate what you give us here on the website. I know a lot of our listeners and readers do as well. And glad you're feeling better and look forward to seeing you here at the racetrack here as we go on, Kev.
Yeah, sounds good, P. We'll see you then.
All right, that's Kevin Ramsell. Don't forget, MidwestRacingCentral.com. That's the place to be. Kevin's got a lot of videos, some stories he writes as well. And we've got everything covered coming up this weekend, starting Friday night at Madison. We got a Tundra race this weekend coming up as well, so lots to keep your eyes on, and we can do it right here at MidwestRacingCentral.com. I'm Pete Pistone. Thanks for listening. Thanks for tuning in to Midwest Racing Central today. We'll see you next time. So long, everybody.